In Soul Plus Systems, I'm Jen, and if you're new here or you're returning, welcome back in. Ed, I'm not bringing you on here for a surface level conversation. You were paralyzed as a child and told you might never walk again. And you didn't just recover, you went on to become a natural Mr. Universe champion. So I want to start here. When everything shut down, what do you actually remember from that moment?
Well, we're talking about literally 40 years this year. It was back in 1986. What I can remember was on the 4th of October 1986, suddenly collapsing, ending up in a random hospital. It was actually called Arrow Park Hospital. Nearest big city to it would be Liverpool for the people across the pond. I'm sure you all have heard of Liverpool. And I just remember being there for what seemed like a long time. I got told it was about a month. I just couldn't move. And I remember gaining some very, very basic movement and coming home probably, yeah, around Christmas time, in the run up to Christmas in a wheelchair. I was obviously just thinking, what's happening? What's happening? So, probably my main memory is general confusion as opposed to outright fear, if you get me.
Yeah, so I mean, when did you think to yourself that it may not be temporary and that it was that real moment for you?
Well, I actually got told the whole story more in later years because I appreciate I was 3 years old at the time. I'm going to what I'm going to do is relay the conversations the doctor had with my parents. So what actually they said was I had an illness called Guillain-Barré syndrome, basically a neurological thing that basically attacks the nerves. Some cases are mild. In my case, it paralyzed me. It varies from person to person. They told my dad I probably would be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I wouldn't walk. And he thought, I'm essentially not going to accept this. And he essentially relayed this to me, years later when I was old enough to understand. But from my own point of view as a kid, I just thought, oh, I used to be able to walk. Now I can't. What's happening, if you get me? So all I can really remember is how my dad relayed it back to me a few years later.
And your father, I mean, he didn't take a passive approach with you. He
Definitely.
studied nerve regeneration and he pushed you, he trained you. So let me ask you this, looking back now, do you think that pressure saved you?
110%. Now, what he actually did, Jen, he read the writings of an Italian doctor, and I have actually been practicing how to pronounce this all day. Her name is, if you Google her, Rita Levi Montalcini. She became an Italian senator in later life. And what she actually did, she experimented on rats and mice by causing them to become aggressive, essentially. And then she monitored how their nerves and reactions grew. My dad at the time was working as a research scientist, and he basically researched nerve growth and stumbled across Dr. Montalcini. And he decided, you know what, I've got nothing to lose. The doctors are giving us no hope. Let's try that on him. So when I was in a wheelchair and had some basic movement, he made me watch Mike Tyson fights and
Yo,
literally
Mike
got me to hit
Tyson.
the bag. That was literally one of my earliest childhood memories, being in a wheelchair, Mike Tyson on TV and hitting a bag repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. And what actually happened was I then started developing basic better movement gradually and gradually until I could sort of, if you like, get up. But things had improved. Now, he made also a very controversial decision, Jen, in that he refused to register me as disabled, or as you would say, stateside physically challenged. And the reason being was that they disabled people or physically challenged people were treated like utter dirt in the UK back then. And he didn't want me to have stigma attached to it. Now, I know it sounds very harsh, but this was the 1980s, a very, very more, shall we say, backward time, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he very much used shock and awe tactics to get me better, and it did gradually work.
I mean, a lot of people today would call that too much. Do
Very
you
much
think
so.
that do you think that most people are protected or they're weakened?
Right. I'm a firm believer, Jennifer, in one size definitely does not fit all. And it doesn't. So what works for me won't work for everyone. That was my dad, who, if you Google him, Professor Galipakai, he became a professor just before he retired. Professor Galipakai acted in good faith at the time with the knowledge he had. And it worked for me as an individual in the 80s. Now, it may not necessarily work for someone getting it now. And in fact, funnily enough, in my biography, penned by my friend Jason Redding, we actually had to write a disclaimer saying, these are the actions of a family in the 80s. Do not attempt to copy them. Consult an actual professional before, if you ever are stricken down with Guillain-Barré syndrome. So, yeah, it's definitely not a one size fits all. It worked for me, it wouldn't work for everyone.
Right, understandable. I mean, you had to relearn your movement, your coordination, literally everything.
Yeah.
So, break this down for me. What did rebuilding your body actually look like from the day to day?
Apart from hitting a punch bag repeatedly, my mom, who was a school teacher, taught me to write and homeschooled me for a bit. So despite the fact that my, if you what are called fine motor skills weren't the best, she really worked with me to improve my handwriting. She also, at the time, we're talking about 87-ish, so I'll be about 4 years old. She got me she like built a pirate ship plank to teach me how to balance better. And when I was at a period where I could sort of develop, where I could sort of run to a degree, they made me play what you would call soccer, but they made me, if you like, play in positions which didn't require much coordination. Give an example, I would play as a central defender, which involves reading the game and tackling as opposed to doing lots of dribbling. It's a bit like the equivalent of, say, a linebacker in American football, where you don't have to necessarily be ultra agile or subtle. If you have if you're not ultra agile, you can play as a certain linebacker, provided you can read the game, if you get me. But I couldn't say, for instance, play a wide receiver where agility is perhaps more important. So a lot of it revolved around working around an injury, essentially, or working around, a severe limitation at the time. Definitely
Right.
made me think what I could do.
Right, absolutely. It sounds like your parents had a lot of hands-on with you. Now, would you
Very
say it
much
was
so.
motivation, or would you say it was that structure that helped you?
I would say it was a mixture of both. I think by nature, my whole family's driven. Both my parents are from absolute poverty, absolutely impoverished background, and they made something of themselves. So clearly, I think drive is very much in our family. The structure clearly helped, because if you're a kid and you have a limitation like that, if you don't have structure, you're not really going to do anything. I think everyone needs structure to a degree, but definitely I think that my family's innately quite motivated.
Well, here's what really stands out to me about your story. I mean, you weren't just recovering, you were rebuilding identity. So, answer this honestly. At
Mhm.
what point did you stop seeing yourself as the kid who was sick and start seeing yourself as something else?
Now, that is $1 million question. I would say this: I never really saw myself as a sick kid. I saw myself more by the way, if you like, I was trained to think, oh, I've got some limitations, but I can work around them. I was using the example in soccer. I always knew I could never say play on the wing, or what you would, or the equivalent of a wide receiver. So I thought, screw that, I'm just going to become a good central defender. I thought, right, fair enough. I'm never going to have great acceleration, but I did relearn, I did actually develop quite good stamina and endurance. I never really saw myself as a sick kid. I just saw myself as maybe having some limitations, but I just work around them and make the most of what I can do.
Sounds like you pushed through daily. Now, you
Very
didn't
much.
step into bodybuilding until nearly 40. And most people are slowing down at that point, but you stepped in and you dominated it. Why?
Okay, so it was good old lockdown back in 2020. My friend, who is now my training sponsor, Matthew White, said to me, Ed, it's lockdown. We're both bored to death. Do you want to do a body transformation and see if I can get you just 10% body fat? And I thought, do you know what? I'll do this. nothing else to do. I don't know what it was like over stateside, but we literally were only allowed to go out for an hour the whole day during lockdown.
I remember those days.
Yeah, fun times. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use this as an opportunity to raise money for charity. So I basically put on social media, hey, I'm this small scale real estate developer. I'm going to get below 10% body fat, raise money for a mental health charity and my local soccer team, Torquay United. And yeah, so I did that. Now, there was a massive novelty element to it. Now, I was not in bad shape before, but somebody who at the time was 37, who was best known as hosting property networking events, doing that was hilarious. And I mean, even I thought it was funny. So what happened was I completed the challenge, raised a lot of money for both causes, and then it then went viral in the real estate world. I then got offered to do modeling jobs. And then Matt said to me, Ed, we've taken this to quite a level. Why don't you start entering bodybuilding competitions, natural ones without steroids? So I thought, you know what, I'll do this. Yeah, we may as well. What I did, I entered a competition by an organization called UK Drug Free Bodybuilding when I was, just turned 40. I entered in what's called men's physique, which is for smaller bodybuilders. I held my own, did pretty well. And then the organizer said, look, we're going to the World Championship. I am aware you're still partially paralyzed in your left foot. That would make you eligible to compete as what's called a para athlete, someone with maybe a more minor disability. How do you feel about it? And I said to him back, I'll do it, but just be aware I'm not registered disabled. Will that be a problem? He said, no, it won't be an issue because I know your backstory. See, there was quite a bit about me online, so he'd done his detective work, so to speak. They went to the World Championship in 2024, won a silver medal. I also competed in the able-bodied division as well, just to push myself. And then after that, I went to the natural version of Mr. Universe and then won gold in the para division. And yeah, that's how I ended up doing it. My trainer Matt said, do you want to do that? And I said, yeah, I just like a challenge. I like growing and I like pushing myself to the limit.
Yeah,
Ultimately.
those are amazing accomplishments. Now, was it about proving something or was it just becoming something for you?
I suppose from my own point of view, I didn't want to ever get complacent because in the years from post lockdown to 2024, I'd done quite a lot. I'd been in magazines. I'd a lot of opportunities came up, but I didn't want to get complacent. And I kind of believe if you kind of get static, you get complacent. So it was just a way of growing, really. And I suppose there was a part of me that did want to sort of, you know, hark back to the person who was very vulnerable at one point and say, this is you today. Because I did think it would be quite a nice feel good story. Because I knew that one of my photographers was writing my biography, and I thought, you know what, this would be an absolutely perfect thing to put in it. Yeah, a mix, really.
Right. Well, you did compete in both para and the mainstream divisions and then natural Mr. Universe. What did that moment actually mean to you?
It meant the absolute world that I got to represent my country on such a big stage. And also, it showed a trait that I think's defined a lot of my life in that I've never been afraid to put myself out there. A bit like yourself, actually. I can tell you're a very bold person. You know, you're not afraid. And it kind of cemented what I kind of, the rules I'd lived by. Just said to myself, I'm not going to be afraid of putting myself out there. And it's just ultimately getting it. It's important to get out of your comfort zone, I always believe, and
Thank
not
you. I
be
appreciate
afraid of
that.
something.
Appreciate that. Did it feel like victory or completion is something that started like decades earlier for you?
I would say it felt like both. Everyone feels victory, but yeah, it kind of felt like a bit of a happy ending. And it gave Jason, the guy who was writing my bio at the time, a really, really nice end to the book. Complete coincidence. It was always the stars had actually aligned.
That's
So
awesome. That's amazing. So you moved into law and then employment and then entrepreneurship. So it's all different arenas, but it's literally the same pattern if we look at it all psychologically. So I want you to break this down for the people listening. What is the actual system that you built that allowed you to win in multiple areas of life?
No, sure. Okay. So, what I think from a systematic point of view, I would say from a very, very early age, I've always had a very, very good disciplined mindset because I was kind of forced to have it. If you look at the backstory, I think it is partly genetic. I think I'm genetic. I think from a genetic point of view, I do have good genetics in that area. In that, I think I have naturally got a good sort of self discipline, but also my family definitely nurtured it as well. So that was one thing. So I would like to say a big shout out to my lovely mum and dad who'll be watching this later for giving me that
Hi,
particular
mom and
gift.
dad. Big shout out.
Another thing that another thing that I think worked was I'm very much an early riser, and I'm a firm believer. As soon as I get up, straight away, I literally write down a task list. Now, everything I've done has been particularly challenging, and whilst I'm disciplined, I'm not necessarily naturally organised. Now, I know they often go hand in hand, but I would say organisation is something that I've had to sort of really teach myself. And what I find, I get up early in the morning, literally write down a task list on a pen and paper. More recently on iPhone notes, and then if you like tick it off. Another thing I've done in terms of systemization, I've always, if you like, looked to sort of go on self-help courses that are available, especially those that are for free. I'll give an example. When I was doing law, I was aware that it was a very competitive environment, so I thought, what can I do to help me succeed? I then discovered that there was a shortage of volunteers to represent people who've been bullied at work at what we call our employment tribunal system. So I thought, right, I'll just go and do that. I think the clear thing is to sort of think outside the box and be prepared to do what others can't. Another thing I'm prepared to do as well is cold calling. Give an example. When I was in law, I would
I've done
frequently.
some cold calling in my life.
I bet you're good at it as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I was going to say cold calling taught me a lot because I kind of realized that in professions, people are often really scared to do stuff like that because people can be really snobby about it. But I think cold calling is the best thing in the absolute world. So I would literally, when I was looking for work experience, I would literally cold call law firms and say, look, I know you're used to having letters, but I want to be a bit more direct in my approach. Will you give me work experience? That really helped me in law. When I branched out into real estate to find property deals, I would literally see what was on the market and go direct to vendor. And I would actually say, look, can we just negotiate directly? I've never ever been afraid to, if you like, use more unconventional approaching, because especially in the digital age, less and less people do it. If you're prepared to do what others aren't doing, then you stand out more, I believe.
Definitely true. 100% agree. And most people, they're right now, they're kind of stuck in excuses. They're comfortable, they're overthinking, and they have these identity loops. So I'm going to ask you something straight up. What would you say to someone who hasn't been forced into adversity but still isn't moving?
What I would say is this is that in the digital age, there are opportunities all the time. I'll give an example. My mum has just hit 81. She has fulfilled her lifelong dream by becoming an Amazon best-selling author. I published her book, The Fruits of Victory. It's a bit of a shameless plug, but I'm going to use this to illustrate a point. If this was, say, the 1970s, when she actually wrote the book I've just shown, she would have to get a publishing deal with, say, Penguin Books. She would need a whole PR campaign. But thanks to good old Jeff Bezos and Amazon, all she needs is literally her son to design a cover and publish it for her. So there are opportunities everywhere. We live in the digital age. Give an example. If this was the 1980s, we wouldn't be doing this. We would probably have to,
Oh.
I don't know, spend literally thousands of dollars on a satellite connection. So thanks to technology, opportunities everywhere, and it's a lot easier to do things in many ways. Be blessed to be living in this era, despite its drawbacks.
Yeah, I definitely am in love with tech if you can't tell. So, um, So, if people would like to follow you along with your journey, where can they find you at?
Yeah, they can find me on my website, which is www.edake.com. If they're on Instagram, please follow me. I'm called Ed Ake Model on Instagram. It's mainly my modeling and bodybuilding there. And I would also really appreciate people visiting my mom's website, the 81-year-old author, at www.kjake.com. Give my mum a bit of love.
Perfect, perfect. We will go ahead and make sure that your links are down in the description below. You've lived through something most people couldn't handle, and it turned into strength, it turned into resilience, it turned into discipline, and it turned into structure. So I will leave it here. If everything was stripped from someone today, what's the first thing that they should rebuild?
If anything was stripped from someone today, I think the first thing you should rebuild is that can do attitude, because you've ultimately got nothing to lose. If you hit rock bottom, you have nothing to lose. As the saying goes, the only way is up.
And that's the difference. Some people wait for life to happen, and others build something and what they're handed. This is Soul Plus Systems. I'm Jen. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.